poetic devices. So first off, I want you guys to have a quick warm-up. So I want you to answer these 5 questions. What is poetry? What do you like about poetry? What do you dislike about poetry? Do you believe that it is possible to like a poem but not understand what it means? And do you consider songs to be a form of poetry? So let's talk about why poetry is important. Poetry is important because it's all around us. It's a form of self-expression, it's in the movies we watch, and it's even in the music we listen to. These are the poetic devices that we will be learning about in class today. Rhyme, imagery, stanza, metaphor, symbolism, and structure. There are a bunch of different types of poetry as well. You have blank verse, rhyme poetry, free verse, epics, haikus, lyric poetry, soliloquies, and sonnets. I'll talk more about this later. First, let's talk about rhyme. So rhyme is the correspondence of 2 or more words with similar sounding final syllables placed so as to echo one another. Now, I'm sure you guys have all heard about rhyme. What I mainly want to focus on is rhyme scheme. So I have an example here. Twinkle, twinkle, little star, how I wonder what you are. Up above the world so high, like a diamond in the sky. Notice how star and are rhyme, so they're a part of the same rhyme scheme. And high and sky rhyme, so they're a part of the same rhyme scheme. Now we have roses are red, violets are blue. I'm out of my head thinking of you. Now these still have a rhyme scheme. Red and head rhyme, so they would be put together. Blue and you rhyme, so they would be put together. Now we'll talk about imagery. As you guys learned before, imagery is visually descriptive or figurative language that is in literary work. Stanza. So a stanza is going to be really important in identifying what type of poem you're looking at. A stanza is a well-defined group of several lines of poetry having a fixed length, meter, or rhyme scheme. Now, that's a fancy definition for it's the paragraphs of a poem. Like I said, you want to be able to find the stanzas because this is really going to help you with structure and figuring out what type of poem you're looking at. Now let's talk about metaphor. Again, you've seen this before, but it's very important in poetry. It's a figure of speech in which a word or phrase is applied to an object or action to which it is not literally capable. I have some examples here. If music be the food of love, play on. The reason why I have these examples is because I want you to know that metaphor does not look the same in, let's say, a novel as it would look in a poem. Love is a battlefield. You are sunlight and I moon. These are more poetically phrased, so they're going to be a bit harder to find when you're looking at them through poetry. Next we have symbolism. Symbolism is a literary device that uses symbols, such as words, people, marks, locations, or abstract ideas, to represent something beyond the literal meaning. Now, symbolism is going to be rich in your poetry. I have some common examples. And I'd like you to know that though you might have not seen symbolism before, subconsciously you have because it's constantly repeated through all types of media that we've seen before, such as the color black is used to represent death or evil, the color white stands for life and purity, spring is the season of youth, love, and rebirth, and snakes often symbolize evil or corruption. Now, to put this in poetic terms, if we are watching or reading a poem and a lot of the imagery is bad weather, it's dark outside, obviously you're not going to think that poem is something very positive or is going to be about something happy. Now, if we have a poem that's writing about springtime, it's bright outside, the birds are chirping, that might be more associated with love or something more positive. So next we have structure. The structure of a poem refers to the way it is presented to the reader. It could include technical things such as line length, stanza like we talked about, or it could include the flow of words used and ideas conveyed. Now, why this is important is because poetry is different based on the structure it's in. So up here I have an example of haiku. Now, a haiku only has 3 lines and no stanzas. Notice that it's going to have a much more abstract idea than, say, a sonnet, which has 14 lines and 4 different stanzas. Now, sonnets usually talk about love. So when we look at a piece of poetry and we see right away that it's a sonnet, you might have an idea already of what the tone could be. I would like to add that, as you learned yesterday, there is an abundance of figurative language in poems, so finding them will also aid in your analysis. Make sure you look out for alliteration, theme, mood, hyperbole, onomatopoeia, allusion, tone, and personification. Theme, mood, and tone you would have learned the lesson before this. Now let's practice. So today what I'm going to have you guys do is an annotation and poem collage activity. So you're going to annotate a poem that I've provided, either if you're watching this on Zoom or if you're watching this from the website. I provided a poem and I also have some annotation tips. Do an initial reading of the poem, write questions in the margins that pop up into your head while doing the initial reading. Identify and underline any words you don't understand in the poem you're provided. Discover and mark rhyme scheme, which I taught you before. You can use this PowerPoint to go back on if you need. Identify all figurative language used within the poem. Circle any words that are impactful or interesting. Record a universal theme. Mark stanzas, if any. Now you're going to be turning this into me, and it'll be due by 8 a.m. on Wednesday. After you've done that, I want you to go ahead and move on to the collage activity. There will be further instruction on that within the website.